I'm Dr. Greg Freund, and I teach Immunology 408, MCB.
When is your course typically offered? Fall, spring, summer, etc.?
It looks like it's going to be offered this spring.
Can you give me a brief overview of what is covered in your course and what are the learning goals?
We're going to cover much of basic immunology with a special emphasis on innate immunity. We are going to use the textbook Immunobiology, and we're going to attempt to do most of the chapters in the initial sections up to some of the late clinical application ones. We're hoping to imbue, is that a word? Is it imbibe? There's an in word in there somewhere. We're trying to translate the importance of clinical immunology into the basic, and also heighten our knowledge of things that are becoming very hot, such as immunotherapies and other types of immunotreatments. Without that sort of basic understanding, it's difficult to translate our knowledge effectively. And that was kind of rambling.
That was perfect. What is the format of your course? Are there discussion sections? Is it taught via lecture or in a seminar format? Are eye-clickers used?
Well, this course is going to be taught in a very unique fashion, in some ways a little bit like medical schools being taught in sort of the new curricular 2.0s. So it's very much a flipped classroom approach, where early on the students essentially become the teachers, so it's has an element of peer teaching. Groups will be in charge of putting together a presentation about the specific chapter that will be assigned. We'll try to assign those based on interest as well as order of the chapters in the textbook. And it's sort of be up to the students on how they kind of want to present that materials. In those presentations, there will also be embedded questions that the students will write, multiple choice style, that everyone in the class will have the opportunity to answer via eye-clickers. So we're trying to have it Tuesday, Thursday format. So the lecture aspect will occur one day of the week. And then later in the week, they'll have a sort of discussion session. And that discussion session, again, will be student-led. And it will be generated because at the end of the first lecture or the presentation session, each group will be assigned, based on their own interest, areas of expansion, what they thought the presentation could use, what areas they thought were still confusing. And as the facilitator myself, I will help organize that element of generating the sort of question list. Then that question list will be developed, passed back to the original group, and each group that came up with that question will develop their own short response during that couple-day period, in which that will then be presented on the following lecture, which should be the Thursday. So it's a little bit complicated, but it's a lot of active learning, and I think it should be very immersive.
Got it. How are students in your course graded? Exams, quizzes, homework?
They will be, much of the grade will be reliant on the presentation and your activity within the discussion sections. Some of that will be narrative feedback, so people communicating sort of a 360 response in which we talk about how we thought things went. And there will be, this is good to know. There will be 2 exams one sort of in the middle of the course, one at the end, and that will also impact the grade. The actual numerics of that are posted on the website. That hasn't been calculated yet. I think I want it to be like 60-40, but the course is still being approved come the 31st, so I'm not sure what the tweaks will be.
Okay. Historically, which portion of the grade breakdown do students struggle most with?
This is a brand new format and a brand new course, imagining of teaching of immunology, so that we don't have those metrics at this moment.
Are there points associated with attendance?
Because of the presentation format, attendance being there is important. And again, I think that this is another, see, I don't know how to answer that question. I'm not sure if we fully flesh that out, but I'll re-answer that. Attendance will be a critical part of the course and likely have an element of summative assessment. Probably too pedagogy speak there, but.
You mentioned this before, I think. Are there any required textbooks for this course?
Immunobiology will be the required text, and again, it'll be on the website.
Got it. Do you provide students with PowerPoint slides or lecture outlines before class?
There will. Oh, that's a good question. Well, I don't think the students will have enough time to do that. Okay. Since this is student-generated presentations, those presentations will likely be available after the presentation. But since one has to understand the materials beforehand to be able to generate the question list, there will be an assumption that each group has engaged with the material beforehand and understands it. So if one is looking for a passive learning experience in which there are handouts beforehand and one can look at those at one's leisure, or not come to class and sort of learn from the book / lecture notes, this probably won't be the course for that type of individual.
What kind of background knowledge do I need to take this course? Are there prerequisites?
There will be prerequisites, and they will be listed on the website. I don't know what the prerequisites are yet. That's been decided.
How do topics covered in your course apply to current research, medical, scientific advancements?
That's a great question. I think we're seeing the sort of rebirth of immunology, especially based in diseases that are infectious, sort of the outbreaks that we're having, also the advancements in immunotherapy, especially for cancer. I think we're seeing more and more that every aspect of disease and health has an immunological bent to it. This includes things like as simple as wound healing all the way to obviously infectious diseases like severe combined immune deficiency. Bubble boy / Seinfeld reference, probably way too esoteric at this moment. The advantage of understanding immunology is understanding the importance of the macrophage, especially hence innate immunity, because of all the cells in the immune system that you can be born without. If you don't have macrophages, you don't get born. So I think that's an important understanding, because cells of the immune system are so important to not only keeping us in health, but also in the formative beginnings of in utero growth.
What opportunities do you provide outside of class for students to ask questions or get assistance?
I'm always available. I don't usually have specific office hours because I actually practice in the hospital as well as have administrative responsibilities as a dean and department head. But my administrative assistant, Jackie Newman, is always helpful in coordinating a meeting, and people want to meet, I'm available.
Okay, last one. Is there anything else that you would like to tell us about your course?
I think it's going to be a fun and exciting experience. I think it's going to be an innovative way to learn. I think for those especially interested in the clinical disciplines, aka medicine, having experience with the flipped classroom approach, team assisted learning, and problem-based learning will be very helpful to that experience.
Thank you.